Hi, I'm Bob, and welcome to Between the Sheets, where we look at Microsoft Excel and related technologies. A cool formatting option many people overlook, or don't even know exists, is the ability to format charts with your own images. Instead of applying colors to columns, pie pieces, and backgrounds, images can liven up a chart and make your message more understandable. So let's take a look. See you later. This worksheet is a classic example of what you might use a column chart for. So let's go do it. I'm going to select the column headers and all the data. I'm being careful not to select the total column at the end or the total row at the bottom. And charts are things that we insert. So I'm going to go to the Insert tab. And in this chart section, at the top is the icon for columns. This works best using 2D rather than 3D, so I'm just going to pick the first one. I want to make this a little bigger, a little easier to see, so I want to put this on its own sheet. So you see down at the bottom we have two worksheets. So with this chart selected, I'm in the Chart Design tab on the ribbon bar, and at the end I'm going to choose Move Chart. I'm going to put it on a new sheet, and I'm going to call it Leasing. Click OK. And now it occupies its own sheet. Now I'm going to put a background on here, just a colored background, just to make it obvious what we're doing, and then I'm going to replace it. So this is just temporary. So when I have it selected, I'm in the Chart Design tab, but I want to be on the Format tab, and I'm going to go here to Shape Fill. And let's just give it maybe a light blue, something like that. As I said, we're going to replace it. So you notice that in each of these locations, up, down, midtown, east, and so on, we have four series, right? First, second, third, and fourth quarter. So I'm going to click one of the first bars, and you notice they all get selected. That's the entire series that gets selected. So I'm going to right-click, and here's that fill icon again, or I could be on the Format tab on the ribbon bar and choose Shape Fill. Same thing either way. So I'm going to go down and choose Picture. And you see I have four choices. Before I go and choose from a file, let me just show you what these other two are. We're not going to use icons, obviously, but I'm going to go and choose Stock Images. And there's all kinds of great stuff we can use. So I'm going to search for skyscraper. And there's some nice images, but none of this is really what I want to use because I want to isolate one. So maybe let's say I'll search for tall building. Also really nice, but nothing isolated. This third one is promising, but we have that background, so I'm not going to use any of this. I'm just going to click Cancel. And I'm going to choose Online Pictures. And you see we have all these different categories, all kinds of great stuff. But also, just a single isolated building just doesn't exist here. Well, there's cats. And cats are always good, but not really what I'm looking for in the chart. So I'm going to cancel that. Now I'm going to go and choose From a File, and these are my own files. And you see I have a whole bunch of images. The first one I'm going to choose is going to be wrong because I want to show you why. I have this image called skyscraper.jpg, and I'm going to double click it, and you see it puts it in, but there's that white background around them, and that's not Excel's fault. This is just the way JPEGs are. JPEGs always have a white background if it's not a perfectly rectangular graphic. So I'm just going to undo. I'll press Control Z. And let's do this again. Maybe I'll go up here to the ribbon bar. Go to Picture, From File. And instead of choosing the JPEG, I'm going to choose a PNG. And PNG files support transparency. So I'm going to double click that. And now it goes in. I'll just click the background to deselect. So you see there's none of that white background. Now let's do this with the other bars. I'm going to right-click the second quarter. go to Fill, Picture. There's no fast way to get through this. You always have to go through this dialog box. And I'm going to choose Skyscraper 2. That goes in. And now I have all 4 of them in there. So that's great, but let's do something with the background and maybe something with the legend because this is still a little hard to see. So I'm going to click on the background. Right now I have the plot area selected. I'm going to click back there. And instead of chart title, let's call this leasing revenue. And I'm going to click on the background. And also in the Format tab, I'll go to Shape, Fill, Picture, just like we were before. And this time I want the interior of a nice office to be the background. So I have this image here called Interior. It looks great, but it's kind of overwhelming. So I want to wash this out a little bit so it's not interfering with the actual columns. And there's 2 ways I could get into this. When I have this selected, in the Format tab on the ribbon, in the Shape Style section, I can click this little arrow, and that brings up the Format Chart Area task pane. Let me close that for a moment. Or I could double-click the background. Either way is going to bring that up. So I'm formatting the chart area, and you see we have these 4 buttons there, and it's by default clicked on that paint bucket. That's what we want. And down over here where it says Transparency, I'm going to take this slider and drag to the right. So that's going to wash it out a little bit, maybe a little bit more. As I'm dragging that, notice that it's increasing that number. So you could do it by number in addition to doing it by the slider. So that looks pretty good. And let me close it. And I'm going to go to this plus sign there. And what I want to do is put in labels and values so I could see exactly what's going on. So I'm going to choose to turn on data labels. If I want, I could turn off the legend. I'm going to leave that on. And because of this background, the text might be a little hard to read. So I'm going to, let's close this. I'm going to double click one of the axes that brings up the Format Axis task pane. So in that paint bucket there, where it says Axis Options at the top, I'm going to click Text Options so I can affect the text itself. And I'm going to manually choose black, and I'm going to do the same with the horizontal axis. Make sure I'm on text options there, solid color, black, and maybe the same for the data labels. So now this is a lot easier to read, and it's a lot nicer to look at. Okay, let's take a look at bubble charts. I'm going to go down there to Bubble. And a bubble chart will give you 3 pieces of information. You'll have a vertical axis and an x-axis, and the content will change size depending on another value. So you see what we have. We have a column for date, for the number of cases sold, and the sale amount. So the date and the cases sold will be on the axes, and the value of the sale is what's going to be in the middle of the chart. I'm not going to go and select this first column. You'll see where that comes in. So let's just select this. I'm going to go back to the Insert tab. And a bubble chart is kind of like a scatter diagram. And in the chart section on the bottom, that's what we've got there. And I'm going to choose this 3D bubble chart. And let me just close that task pane for a moment. Drag this over so I can see it. Maybe stretch it out. So bubble charts are really cool. And you see what's happening is on the vertical axis, we have the number of cases, we have the date across the horizontal axis, and the size of the bubble is determined by the sale amount. So let's say something is going to change. Let me just show you how to use this before we put pictures in. I'm just going to hover over this first one. And you see that's the very first one in the list. And you see there's the values, 3411, and that's kind of small compared to some of the others. If I click that, and let's make that 5,000 and even 5,000. and enter it. So you notice that gets bigger. Now let's put some images in there. So that's apples. I'm going to click it, and when I click it, it selects all the bubbles, so I need to click it a second time. And now I'm going to right click it, and just like before we were doing with the column chart, I can choose Fill, Picture, from File. And these are all pings, so there's an apple. Now I simply do this with all the other bubbles. So the second one is oranges. So I click it, I need to make sure it's just that bubble that's selected and not all the others. Again, it could be on the Format tab of the ribbon, either way. Shape Fill, Picture, from File, Orange. Let's do all the others. So now I've replaced all of those bubbles with the fruit that we're selling. So let's say all of a sudden we're going to sell a whole lot more avocados, and you see that's one of the smallest bubbles there. So let's go there, and instead of 3,500, let's make that 9,000. And the size increases accordingly. So here's a case where maybe we can insert an online image. I'm going to make sure the background is selected. I'm going to go to Format, back to where we were, Shape Fill, Picture. And this time I'm going to choose Stock Images. And I'm going to search for produce. And let's scroll down here. And here's a great picture of, looks like a farmer's market. So I'm going to click that and insert. And it's a little overwhelming, so I'm going to double click it. Back to the Format Chart Area task pane, and I'm going to take this transparency and drag it way to the right. There we go. And now we have a very nicely formatted chart. You can apply images to any chart object you can select in any type of chart. Pie charts work well with this also. So until next time, my name is Bob, and this has been Between the Sheets.